Hi, and good evening, good day, whichever part of the world that you are in, and wish you a very, very happy new year. And what we at People First, have anchored as around a progressive 2022, and rightfully we called it New Horizons. So befittingly, we love to invite you for today's LinkedIn Live. So thank you, LinkedIn. Thank you, Vidita, who helped set all of these things from People First. And Shraddha and I are very, very happy to welcome all of you. So welcome to this LinkedIn Live. And I think there's something very close to, I know it's definitely close to Shraddha's heart and close to my heart as well. And this is about, do we trap our imagination and let it fly? So very often, Shraddha and I are colleagues, you can see it in the come up people first, come up people first. So, very often when we work, when we ideate, when we talk about it, we find ourselves in so many spaces where we ideate, we imagine, we visualize. And we found a lot of times in which sometimes it comes completely clean, beautiful, we're in a lovely space, and everything is beautiful, and sometimes we get stuck here and there, and we backtrack, we get sometimes trapped. So the question that came today was, do we trap our imagination or let it fly? So with that, I welcome you, and I'll let Shraddha say a few words.
Yeah, and not only do we trap ourselves, but we trap each other as well. And then you end up making a big mess of it. But just a while back, we were trying to gather in to say uh, what were those things that you would really like to leave you guys with, right? And I was imagining analogies to share, hold the space to be able to get something. And the one word that I got, which I shared with Uma earlier as well, was that imagination is a genie. It'll do whatever you say. So if you knock the doors and say, you know what, I'm scared, imagination will bow down and lend itself to you and say, all right, you know what are the things that are going to happen to you today?
Let
One,
me
two,
help you
four.
get scared.
Help you get scared. So, since we are in the space of imagination, here is one thing that you could begin to imagine, right? Imagine you made an error at work, and it's early morning the next day. You can sort it out as well. But just as you're stepping into the lift, now probably not stepping into lifts, but imagine if you were stepping into a lift, and you got a message from your peer to say, "Hey, where are you? It's getting late, man." Some sort of message, and you have now entire 30 seconds to about a minute in the elevator, imagining that maybe the mistake got amplified, or so it depends on what you hold as a quality, right? In that particular moment, if you're holding a quality of fear, imagination in those 30 seconds, a minute will give you amazing stuff that will scare you by the time you reach the floor. If you are a person who's a little bit driven by desire, and let's say your desire is to be the best in the team, imagination will lend itself to say and give you ways in which because of this particular situation, how that would not be possible for you. If you're a person who's extremely emotional, and let's say for various reasons as we grow, and you've been holding guilt, nor will there be a fear of what's going to happen next, nor will there be a desire to be the best, but that imagination of lending it to the guilt to say that, oh my god, what just happened, and because of this so many other people will be impacted, and so will happen, and all of that will take you on a different trip. That probably brings me to our first practice, which Uma will lead, where we begin to explore and experiment that if we were to free ourselves in those 30 seconds, 1 minute, what would that look like? What would that freedom be, and how would we even begin to get to a place of freedom from all of these?
And I think it's in that moment of time that we can put that tiny practice. I think one of the things that, this LinkedIn Tuesday that we're setting ourselves for is, what would be those tiny practices in the moment like she was talking about the moment or 30 seconds that we have. Okay. And we find ourselves either gripped by any of these three scenarios that she talked about. How would we immediately start beginning to identify, oops, I'm caught here? And what can I immediately do to shift? So the first step that we're getting into our practice right now is to get into what we call a neutral space, which means can I for a moment disconnect from that grip of either the desire or the fear or the guilt, the anxiety, or any other limitation that is passing us, or the purposefulness that we need to move towards, but something is stopping us, something has gripped us. So that's the first step that we're looking at, which is how do we get into space of neutrality, and what is the tiny practice? So one of the things that some of you, if you're coming in for our inwardly calm every day in the morning in India time that we do, this is the first thing that we begin with. So you can do this practice with eyes closed or eyes open. But what are we doing here? We're essentially using the body and the breath to come to the present moment and to free ourselves from whatever is gripping us in that moment. That's what we do. So let's begin. So as I said, you can do this eye practice with your eyes open or closed. I'll just close it for benefit of first timers. And the minute you want to start this practice, just connect to your breath as it is in the moment. Now, if we are in the elevator situation, our mind is racing, our thoughts are racing. Let them be. You take a step back and truly tune into your breath. It helps to even touch a part of your body and watch where the breath is in the body. It might be fast, it might be slow. And gently settle into the breath as it is in the moment, without evaluation, without judgment. As thoughts come, as emotions come, let them be visitors. Just observe them like a visitor. They come and pass through, they pass through, and we are anchored in our breath. We just watch it for what it is. Okay, we watch an anxiety passing. There's a fear based thought that what if? Or there is this emotion that's in the stomach. We gently release that back to our breath. In fact, you can use your breath to push and release yourself from it in the moment, not in the mind, but in the body. Just stay quiet for 30 seconds. Whenever you're caught by a thought or an emotion, just gently step back and tune into your breath as it is in the moment. And notice that you're feeling different from a few seconds back. Okay, you can gently come to the LinkedIn Live present. Let me just pause here. Any comments that are in the chat? Any questions or anything that Shraddha wants to share?
I think this one thought came by. Here is another imagination, right? To say, okay, we kind of begin to observe our breath. We kind of begin to step back, but solutions don't come through just stepping back, right? So, what is it that we do? What is it that we can hold? And one of the experiences that came to mind now was that there are multiple number of times I've been on the edge, uh, and the next thing that you want to do is you want to complete the picture because you're not okay with something that's not complete, right? So you want to begin to complete the picture. You want to begin to take that next step immediately, and all of this is again, in a sense, it is freeing up. In another sense, but as we go a little deeper, we realize that there is a sense of holding either the tension that we have, or holding for a certain solution, being okay with not knowing, being okay if the solution is not arriving for days together, sometimes for months together as well. Uh, and we know between us within our organization as well, with the kind of products that we built last year, it would probably take about 2 to 3 months, but we know how we've held each of that for solutions to come through. Uh, and we've also known that holding gives a certain capacity of how we make it, right? How we make it is basic. What becomes of it is what right now is going in that. Sometimes the sense of hurry, but a lot of times it's a sense of how do we hold that silence and make the solution come to us rather than running and wanting to close the picture.
Yeah, I think beautifully shared. I think there are two things that I from what you're saying. One is how do we come to even a space where solutioning can begin. So that's one aspect of neutrality. How do we know that what we're imagining is not colored? That's the aspect that beautifully neutrality brings. And then how do we begin to start seeing what is it that actually we want to manifest, and what is it that is meant to? And I think there are two beautiful points there. One, like you said, is how do we allow imaginations to come touch us, vis-a-vis how do we begin to start quickly wanting to fix the solution. So one is, could imagination truly, when we say imagination fly, could we actually get the imagination to fly and come or reach and appear as it's meant to, vis-a-vis what we would like it to be, in whatever frame of reference we're seeing it in. And for that, that holding silence, waiting patiently, and even holding a question alive without solutioning it is a very interesting exercise that I don't think very often we succeed in. And the second one is also that imagination is like, the second word that came to me was, it's a possibility to enter, which means then, do we in our mind space, in our question space, even in our time space, like often we are, having to solution something within 30 minutes, 40 minutes, even in that space, could we come to this space of silence enough to allow for possibilities to emerge, vis-a-vis from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to what I know, to therefore naturally the next step obviously should be 6 or 7, vis-a-vis
Yeah.
what is the true possibility that imagination can bring. I think that's the second beauty of letting imagination fly. So
Yeah, one thing that came to me when you were sharing this is, that state of limbo, which we often refer to, right? Oh my God, I'm in a state of limbo. And now it almost seems like that state of limbo is a gift. It's literally a gift given to you to kind of step back, to reflect, to get in a space of silence, and then see how the wonder unfolds, right? Of what ought to be, rather than what we the form that we want to put to it.
could we have that as a second practice now?
All right, let's go right here.
Yes, Shraddha.
So we'll do 1 plus 2 now. So we begin with 1. Again, the same thing. Feel free to close your eyes if that helps. Feel free to keep your eyes open. If you have a small object in front of you and if you think that will help you focus, have that in front of you and just peripherally look at it. Center into your breath. Just observe the flow. Allow the imagination to take over a little bit. Get into that elevator. Literally the space in between. Right? Whatever passes you by, a sensation in the body, in any particular part, a thought, an image, an emotion, maybe it's keeping you at the edge. As you observe your breath, can you be at that edge, holding the quality of silence? Initially, as we practice, we consciously hold the quality of silence. We experientially just get into that space. Holding silence doesn't necessarily mean there are no sounds, whether from outside or in the mind or emotional or sensational. It just means all of that is there and there is silence and there is a space. If solution comes, great. If it doesn't, we're not applying any of our faculties right now. to get to the solution.
And we just quietly receive.
Slowly come back. As I was feeling this, it did get tough. Was that when you are in a certain space where there's pressure from all sides in life or at work, there are times, of course, in extremes, that can cause either mental health or physical health or emotional health. It can take a toll on that. To literal extremes, people do commit suicides, and sometimes holding that at the edge gets tough. Whether somebody goes through that, or at times we go through somebody's experiences in our own imagination and run it again and again, and then to come back to the space of silence, it does get tough, but it's also very, very helpful. And that probably takes us to our next conversation as well, right? And therefore, in this silence, what do we hold as an intention, as a quality, as a purpose of why or what is making us do what we're doing, right? Whether it's work or any situation that we take in life. Work-wise, there have been times where we've taken, like we've been working on a product, and the product ideas and the pieces of the product ideas came merely because we were just able to hold that aspiration, that this is the problem that we want to solve for, and we don't know the solution right now. Nor did we literally go researching for solutions, but we just held that space. Uh, and certain experiences, certain people come in at some time, they just drop in a clue and they go, and then you begin to say, oh, because that space is open, because you're allowing for solutions to come in, because you're not closing it with a particular idea or a particular solution, but you're allowing them to trickle in. Uh, and therefore, Uma, what are the practices that we can do to be able to, let's say, one, receive those solutions, and second, with a certain amount of surety, say that, okay, this is something that's going to work.
That's a tricky one, the second one. So I'll combine that with, and feel free to add on, Shraddha. I know you're asking the question for discussion and dialogue. I'm also seeing Siji's question around how to let the imagination fly. Okay, what will help bring the imagination to action or fulfillment? I think that's the ask is okay. All this is fine. The imagination is all fantastic as long as we don't go and end up actioning it. Then what happens? I think I get that sense. I'm with you, Siji, on that. But if I hold to the first part of the question, which is how to let the imagination fly, and also come from the space that Shraddha was pointing out, saying how would we begin to first be an empty container to allow an imagination to fly? And I think two, three things that really help us hold. And I think that's the scenario that I think you were talking about also, Shraddha, which is if we held on to that true purpose or intention of whatever that we are trying to achieve at that point in time. And that would be a central focus, I believe, outside of us, which means it's not Uma or Shraddha ideating a project or, this needs to get here, this needs to get there. That's outcome based ideation. So if I say, the process is what we're doing, but if I find myself, hooked onto an outcome, if I find myself hooked onto myself and my process of thinking, and if I'm hooked onto all the other things that we've been discussing so far, then I believe that truly the imagination doesn't fly in that sense. What helps fly the imagination is to keep the central focus on, I assume, the work, or what we call anchored in purpose that you found in the event, which is what is the true intent of what we are trying to achieve? What was the true purpose behind the breakthrough solution that I want to create? Or what is the change that I want to to manifest, and not change in its particularness, but change in its exact quality or frequency or exact nature. So we wanted to give an experience of, let's say, like this has been a project that's evolved for over 5-10 years of Arul and us, and now all of us together as well, which is how do we create a companion of inner work, or how do we create what we call a sadhana companion for life, right? Because we all want to create changes, we all want to do create sustainable changes in us and others, but we always fall short of that. So we wanted to know what would be that life companion. And interestingly, our vision at that point in time was like, this kind of app or this kind of a system where, the companion will be there throughout, and these people will fill up every week a sheet and tell them, how we are. That's the imagination that was there, that was ruled by that thinking at that point. When we broke it down to saying it's not an app, it's not a portal, it's not anything, it's just what would be a lifelong companion, what would serve a person in their own journey. And when that question picked up, and when that intent picked up, and then we just let people receive whatever ideas, forms, thoughts, shape came, and we allowed that silence or space for containers, I believe that's when a lot of things began to start coming through. And as Shraddha said, it need not come in one piece, it came in multiple pieces. Today we have too many too many means not many, but many than we thought would be lifelong companions. And right now we are gifted in at least 4 5 ways in which we can touch people in what would be lifelong companions. That's not how we started, but that's how we're ending now, and the journey is still going forward. So, Suji, I don't know if that directly answers you as to how to let imagination fly, but that's one space. How do we anchor an intention? How do we anchor a thought in a way and just receive? And we can receive from us, we can receive from others. And just receive, and in one place it will fall rightly inside. So, how do we know that will work? Is we'll do a short practice, and then we'll sort of look at it. So I think this is just a trust and a faith in the process, that if we hold something extremely strong as the intention or purpose behind something, and we just wait for a clarity or an image or a signal, the indication will come. It may not come in the exact way we want, but it will come. This is one faith. The second one is the aspect of allowing the imagination to flow through us. So we'll quickly go through the first 2 steps. Just connect your breath. Connect to the silence. And identify a breakthrough that you want in your life or at work. It can be a project, it can be a challenge. And by now your imagination will start flying actually. As in, when I say flying, I mean moving very fast. Take a pause. If your mind is flittering and your attention is in your forehead, then it's probably thoughts right now. Just step back and ask yourself, what's the intention or true purpose behind this project or challenge? Say it within yourself for reinforcement, and hold that central to your thoughts. And for the next 30 seconds, without attachment, just receive whatever image, form, shape as a possibility from the future right now that is coming for you.
So remember, we are not creating, we are conduits.
We set aside emotions, thoughts, and just receive. And we enjoy the process of where the imagination is taking us, and we just receive. So with that, we come to the end of 3 practices, and then comes the actual action and fulfillment that Suji was talking about. That in those ideas, there'll be gems, they'll start falling in place, and you start executing some of them, start discussing some of them until fully formed. Okay. And then slowly, sometimes you'll start feeding something, somebody else will give their imagination, and something will get formed, and then the pursuit and perseverance to action. I think there's no shortcut to that. So, Suji, I know that's a question that will be probably for future LinkedIn's as well. But without action or fulfillment, I think an imagination goes away. I was just sharing with Shraddha that somebody was telling me that, hey, we are gifted with a thought, or gifted with an imagination or an intuition, if we don't keep listening to it or actioning it, then its power will come down. At least that's been my experience. It's still there, but it'll come down, or our capacity to receive will come down. So
And we
actioning
open
is
to failures. Some ideas might not work. We might not be centered. We don't know till we really know it. So still go ahead
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
explore, experiment.
Yes, thanks, Shivani. Focus on the clarity is there. Or rather, the pursuit of the question. One is the clarity, but we don't know what is clarity. Rather, it's the pursuit or the perseverance to hold the true intent or purpose of whatever we wanted to create. Not in form, but the question or the intention what we want to create. And then the forms will start coming in. And trusting those imaginations when we are in silence is the whole game here. So, with
All
that, I
right.
think we're done. All right. Thank you for this
Thank
opportunity,
you.
getting us live here. And it's not
And tune
necessarily
in next Tuesday.
for many of us, at least for me. So, thank you all. Thank you for this, and look forward to many more connects. Thank you.